Welcome to Unspoken, community and business conversations powered by Touch Cleveland. Following last year's racial uprisings, we saw a plethora of Black stories resurface, and it brought to the forefront the importance of knowing our history or being bound to repeat it. Traditionally, Blacks kept history by gathering around their elders and listening to their stories, but today's generation seems to have lost that value. Rose's Living Legends sat down with Cleveland's prominent movers and shakers aged 70 and up to capture their wisdom, experiences, and more importantly, to give them their roses while they're here. In truth and in light, this is Unspoken. With us, Mansfield Frazier. Thanks for joining us, Mansfield.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right, so we're going to kick it right off. Who are you? Tell the people who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm a print journalist by profession. I write about politics and the intersection of social and criminal justice. I also am the executive director of a nonprofit, Neighborhood Solutions, and the co-general manager of Château, Hough, the winery that we're sitting in.
How long have you been here in Cleveland?
I was born here.
Born and raised?
Born and raised. I left for about 30 years, but I've been back for over 25 now.
Okay. What area?
I was born right where Jane Addams High School sits right now. Back in the day, there used to be a tavern setting right on that corner, and I was born upstairs over the tavern that my father owned.
What would you say you are best known for, or what it has been your most significant contribution?
Trying to raise the consciousness about social and criminal justice issues with my pen. I'm probably best known as a journalist.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say has been your most significant contribution?
Concrete contributions probably is, the Black community, we always say that we need to own our own businesses. So a significant contribution is the establishment of the Vineyards and Winery of Château, Hough.
We love the Vineyards and Winery of Château, Hough.
Well, thank you.
Okay. What would you say is one of the most significant moments in history that you have witnessed?
Probably the election of Barack Obama.
Really? What made that so significant for you?
Well, the fact that the country had moved far enough along that we could elect a person of color as president of our nation. Something we didn't think, as a young man, I didn't think was possible. I didn't think could happen.
What's I'm going to skip to the next question and come back on that one. So you said that you didn't think getting a Black president would be possible. So what is something about life or society that you thought would be different by now?
Well, I thought that he would make more of a significant change in American society. Yes, we elected a Black president, but it's still, the pushback against his election was tremendous. So it was a step forward briefly, and now we seem to be receding from that.
Is there anything that's farther along than you imagined it would be?
Well, I think that societies improve. We have more of our young people finishing high school, going to college. Doors are opening that were previously closed. So as we get our young people trained, there's more opportunities for them.
What is one of the most significant moments in Cleveland history that you've witnessed?
The election of Carl Stokes.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
What made that so significant? Well, obviously being black mayor, right?
Yeah, he's being the first black mayor of a large American city.
Mm-hmm.
I was down at City Hall when he came out and made his inaugural speech. I was in the crowd.
Wow. So, do you see any similarities in perhaps maybe pushback that Carl Stokes maybe went through, and in comparison to Obama? Do you feel like it was the same, it was different, those being the two black men being elected in a prominent position? Do you see any similarities with those campaigns?
They both had blowback. They both got pushed back against. Carl Stokes wrote in his book, Promises of Power, that the one thing he wasn't able to change was the police culture. And he struggled with that. And President Obama wasn't able to change the conservative right-wing culture that pushed back against him.
What's one thing you wish you would have done?
I wish I had have gone south. I should have been at the Edmund Pettus Bridge. I wanted to go and take part in the civil rights struggle, but I was a young father, and my wife at the time and my mother, they were fearful for my safety. And they might have been right, because how much I could have participated and remain nonviolent, that was their concern, that I wouldn't remain nonviolent, so therefore I would get hurt. But I didn't participate in the civil rights movement at the time in the 60s, and I've always regretted that.
Oh, wow. So even though you may have not went south to participate, and you mentioned, what was the name of that bridge?
The Edmund Pettus Bridge. That's where they were marching Birmingham and Montgomery, and that's the famous bridge where John Lewis got beat down.
So is there anything here in Cleveland? Sounds like you were still within activism. What kind of things did you get involved in here in regards to the civil rights movement?
Not a lot at the time. I was a busy young father. I regret that I didn't participate more at that time in the civil rights movement. Since my return to Cleveland, I've been active, particularly with my pen in the civil rights movement, raising consciousness, explaining issues.
Okay. Yeah. So when we think of Cleveland, there's a lot of issues that are affecting Cleveland, and when you look at the root of most of them, you can find systemic racism at the core. If there was one particular issue that you think Cleveland should focus on right now, what would you say?
Probably a more concerted attempt at reducing gun violence, making it a safer city for everyone. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The last weekend we just had, I think, 5 people killed in the Buckeye area.
Wow.
And since the pandemic has slowed down, more people are out and about, and there have been more shootings. And that's a tough problem. That's everybody promises when they're running for office that they have solutions to it, but solutions are going to be hard to come by. We have to start interacting with our young people at an earlier age and steering them away from a life that leads to gun violence.
Okay, and so let's go a little deeper on that. Like, what do you think is obviously a lot of these things are interwoven into each other, but what do you think the root of that is coming from? Like, why is that seemingly, because you did mention that we have more kids graduating high school, we seem to have, more kids that are going to college, that are wanting these things. So how is it that we're also seeing a rise in education in that sense, but then also this type of behavior that's resulting in gun violence?
Well, you repair societies from the ground up. We tend to focus on the students that are doing well. We put our emphasis a lot on those young people. Mm-hmm. We tend to ignore the young people that are from dysfunctional families, and those are the ones that fall through the cracks and take up a life of crime. We have to intervene sooner with providing assistance for young mothers, struggling mothers, to provide guidance for their children.
If you could leave the whole world with any advice, or the youth specifically with any advice, what would be your message?
Well, I'll leave you with a quote from Dr. King. In this world, we'll have to learn to get along as brothers, or we'll perish as fools.
Can you repeat that?
In this world, we'll have to learn to get along as brothers, or we'll perish as fools.
If there is anything that you want to see in your time, what would it be? Is there anything that you're just like, oh, if we could just get this one, if I could just see this happen before I go, like, what's that one thing that you'd want to see either change or come about?
The saving of our youth, of our at-risk youth, to expand the social safety net so that we truly don't leave any children behind, that we start interacting with children and families at a younger age, so they don't turn to gangs and gang violence.
So what's a few things that maybe each individual person, since that's the one thing that you want to see and your focus, what's something that every single person individually can do to support this cause?
Well, they can identify families and help them, tutor at schools, sort of adopt families that are struggling, provide a guidance to young people. I'd like to see young black people, that high school graduates on their way to college, come back and serve as police officers. I think we need more black policemen, particularly women. I think we need more females in uniform and females of color in uniform. I think that's how we solve some of the police brutality issues.
Kofi, can you do me the honors? Well, as you know, Mansfield, I love you. You know I love you.
I love you back.
And of course, just in my few years of knowing you, or a little more than a few years now, I've seen the impact of your work, the impact of your voice, and I appreciate your work. I look up to you and admire you, and we just want to make sure we are paying homage to the people that we feel like have paved the way, that have opened doors. Something you've done over time, even if it wasn't awarded, has opened doors. So we want to give you your roses while you're here.
Oh,
thank you, Kofi. There you go.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
It's wonderful. Thank you.
You are so welcome.
So who are you?
I'm Brenda Frazier. I'm a coordinator for the Neighborhood Solutions, Inc. and the winery at Château Hough.
Okay, and what's your relationship with Mansfield?
I am Mansfield's spouse.
Okay, and how long have you been Mansfield's
We've been
spouse?
married since 1999. I was living in Cleveland. We met in 96. I was living in Cleveland. I have one daughter. We wanted to wait until she graduated from high school. So we got married right before then, and then I moved here, got a job. She went off to college, and I moved here.
When you met Mansfield, had he started Château Hough?
No, when I met Mansfield, he was working for a publication called the Downtown Tab, the Downtown Cleveland Tab. I lived in Dayton, he lived here.
When you think about Mansfield, what do you think he's done that he's going to be remembered for?
Ideas. To me, he's the idea man. He looks at situations and he tries to come up with a resolution. So I call him the idea man. And he first embarked on the whole area of reentry and wanted to do something to educate individuals about their return home from a period of incarceration, and to help those who are working with them as well as their families to understand that return home from incarceration, what everybody needed to be prepared for, how they could prepare for it, and that sort of thing. So that's how I think of it.
Okay. And do you think that's what Cleveland's going to remember him for?
I think Cleveland's going to remember him for some of that, as well as his opinions about what's going on in society, not only in Cleveland, but the broader community. I think people are going to remember him for some of that, for his ideas as well as his thoughts. I won't say criticisms, I'll say his thoughts about the way of the world.
Okay, and so what are you most proud of Mansfield for achieving?
What am I what?
What's your most proudest moment, or what are you proud of about, like, what makes you proud about Mansfield?
I'm proud about Mansfield because he shares his ideas. He is outspoken, and I think there's a need for people to be outspoken. I think sometimes his opinions are provocative. They stir up our thoughts, and they make us think in different ways, sometimes perhaps ways we had never thought of before. And I think that's good for everybody.
Okay. So that's what makes you proud.
Yeah.
But what are you going to remember Mansfield for?
What am I going to remember him for?
Yes.
Excuse me. Because in spite of all of that stuff, he's a very gentle and kind person.
Okay.
And I like being around him. He's fun.